Good morning, I'm Wayworn Worm, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to the first episode of the Ballad of Lithuania. In 850, Valnius of Zimitagi, better known as King Valnius the Magnanimous, became the High Chief of Zimitayja, as well as the Chief of Trakai. Almost 20 years later, he started a series of wars that would last the rest of his life. He became known as the Magnanimous in the early 870s after he had doubled the size of his chiefdom. It is often argued by scholars that the title was used sardonically later in his life. However, this author does not subscribe to that. While he eventually became known for being firm in his rule, there is no sign that he did not continue to help his people as he had become known for early in life. Valnius declared himself King of Lithuania in 879 after carving out a kingdom between the Vistula and the Daugava rivers. Later that year, he sowed the seeds that almost ended his kingdom when he made his second son, Peteus, High King of Prussia. In 880, just 5 years before he would die, he would start the last major war of his life, in which he added the High Chiefdom of Lithuania to his kingdom. His last war would be in late 884, and would be ended by his son almost exactly 4 months after his death, adding the Isle of Ostel to the kingdom. The last 15 years of his life have been elevated to myth in the minds of Lithuania to this day, just as the life of Rurik the Just has to the people of Rus. This status of myth was helped by the fact that his later life was one of expansion and great wealth for his people. While soon after he died, the kingdom was shaken by several civil wars and attempted wars of independence. This image of his later years being a golden age, followed by years of uncertainty and doubt, was cemented by the scribe Aurelius the Prussian, who was hired by King Bubblius the Holy to write the family chronicle, only to have the king dethroned, imprisoned, released, impoverished, and made high chief within 2 years of the start of Aurelius's reign. Traidenis Lycaean, a history of medieval Lithuania. Valnius paced nervously, his slender fingers tapping at the rail surrounding the platform around his hall's entrance. Watching the servants build the effigy of winter, he was determined that this year, the festival of Uzengravsness would be one to remember for years to come. Not only would it be a festival to ensure the summer of this year, but it would bring the summer of his rule. Recently he had added to his realm the chiefdom of Zemyel, and the holy site that was located in their lands. He was sure that the gods favored him, at least of all his neighbors. "Good evening, my chief. How are the preparations going?" a deep voice asked behind him. Looking to his side, Valnius saw Lamichinus, the mayor of Selpius, and his best advisor on military matters, walk up to him. "It appears that this is going well, as you can see. I didn't expect to see you here so soon. Not many have farther to come than you." Valnius greeted him warmly as they turned back to watching the construction. "Selpius is a small town, and most matters before me and my council are that of rebuilding after your army sacked the town. That is an area best left to other men." Valnius nodded. "I can see that. I'm sorry you were on the side of the battle that you were. However, soon you'll be on the side that is doing the sacking, and not the side that is being sacked." Lamichinus chuckled. "A few months ago, I was watching a horde of men surround my town and wait us out. Now I'm getting ready to celebrate Uzengravness with the man who led that horde. As he talked, Valnius noticed that Lemminkinis's face bore testament to his trials during that war. His cheeks were sunken, and he had large bags under his eyes. His eyes seemed more weary than Valnius had ever seen them, even when he had marched proudly out of his town holding his banner of a golden longboat on red and green to surrender it to Valnius. "And what a celebration it will be," Valnius responded quietly, almost afraid to break the suddenly solemn air around the two men. "And what a celebration it was," Gardinus said overly loudly as he clapped Valnius on the back so hard the High Chief had to take a step forward to not stumble. Gardinus had been deep in his cup all night drinking thick beer, and from the looks of it, he was still deep in it. "I'm glad I came. The gods showed me their favor tonight, that is for sure." Janula looked on disapprovingly as he stood by, his hunch clearly visible. "Gardinus, you're a priest. It would not hurt if you acted like one from time to time." Gardinus laughed. "Janul, you are much too stuffy. I hope you know that. It is clear you spend too much time in your temple divining things, and not enough time among the people." The slight slur in his voice was quite evident as he went on. "It's all good that you try to read the stars, and you're entrusted with watching over one of our most holy sites. But there is more to life, and you should know that." With that, he started staggering off toward home before Janula had a chance to respond. Valnius made his way over to the scholarly priest. "Don't let his words affect you too much. Remember, he's quite a few years younger than you, and you yourself are not an elder." Janul looked up. "Oh?" he said, blinking for a second. "Of course. I don't let his words get to me at all. He's currently a drunken priest who has much learning before him." He paused for a moment and pointed at the palisade going up not too far from where the effigy was still glowing embers. "Is that because of how easy it was for you to add to your realm?" he asked in a slightly pained tone. Valnius groaned inside. The problem with having former enemies come to your celebrations so soon after conquering them was that they made the mood too somber. "Partially," he said truthfully, "and partially because right now I have a hall that happens to be on a hill. With a palisade, I will have a hill fort, something that can be defended well." Valnius surveyed the lowlands around his hill fort. Men and women in simple garb were moving among the fields of gold, while beyond the millet fields lay one of the many forests his part of the world was known for. He heard that the Christians thought that these forests were dark, brooding things that swarmed with savage folk and goblins and other such terrible things. That was fine for them to think that, though the truth was much different. Few people lived in the forests, which were not that dark, nor were they brooding. And while there were wolves, boars, bears, and other deadly creatures, there were no goblins. At least, not that he had ever heard of. Lemminkinis strode up to him. "I know that look. That is the look a man gives his home when he is about to leave it and is unsure when or if he will return. So I take it you have picked a target for our men then." Valnius turned his head to look at his marshal, considering what to say to the man. He had picked his next conquest, the next men who would feel the might of his men, and that thought gave him little pleasure. It was what he had to do, though. When the old crone told him he would one day wear a crown on his head, he knew he would have to forge a territory worthy of being called a kingdom. "Yes, I have. Raise the levies and gather them here. The harvest is almost over, so the men can go a while away from their farms. We will march against High King Kodari of the Coronians. We will push him against the sea, and his men will break. Lemminkinus nodded a bit slowly. I see, he said in a measured tone. I will send word out for the levies to be raised. I think most men will come, but some men will refuse their duty to come for their fields are not yet fully harvested. I expect you're right with that, and we'll not punish them for it. We should have enough to do that do come, and those that don't need to worry about their family making it through the winter. Winter was harsh, and if a field didn't produce enough, in almost all cases that would spell death for at least some of the family. To leave a harvest unfinished was unthinkable. Regardless of that, they had to march soon. Valnius was not the strongest chief in the area, and he knew that fact well. Thank you so much for listening to the first episode of the Ballad of Lithuania. And tune in tomorrow for the Friday